Hello everyone and welcome to the sixth part of the Google Agent Development Kit for Beginner series. This video is about something that you have been asking about. That is, how do we deploy our agent to cloud? How do we send this out there so the users can start using that? And we're going to cover it all in this video with some basic examples. Now I want you to know that whole concept of this in a really optimized way is not possible in a single video. So I'm going to go very basic on it and then you can expand on top of it. So first of all, when we talk about deploying the agent development kit, you have a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, you can have your agent packaged as a container and then you can deploy it to the Vertex AI Agent Engine, which we are going to use today. You could also do it with Cloud Run, and you can also use your own infrastructure to deploy it. That could be GKE, your on-prem solution, or a Docker host in that manner. Before we dive into the code, I want to show you what we are going to build today or continue building today. So this is an agent that I worked on the third video, which was using multimodals for your agents, which means that we are using Claude 3.5, we are using Gemini 2.0 Flash, we are also using OpenAI. So all these different providers are going to be used in this particular example, and we are going to deploy it to the cloud. Now, in one of the videos in the session, I talked about sessions and how you can create sessions, what sessions are, what are events, and I'm just going to summarize it, not going into too much detail. So whenever your user is going to start chatting with an agent, that should create a session, and that has to create a session because a session is what basically keeps the memory of all the messages sent within a particular conversation and also all the events that were dispatched. For example, if you asked a question, a model could have used a tool that emits an event. Similarly, there could be multiple models involved in responding depending on your agentic AI team. So all of that is bound within a session, and by default, no two sessions share the same information, but a session can be resumed. So you can continue asking the same questions just like you do in ChatGPT, etc. And we also talked about what is a state. So one agent can emit an output in a state variable and other agent can pick information from there. So the state is essentially during a particular session, what is being conversed, what are the variables that can be shared among different agents and can be reused within a particular whole conversation. That is what the state is. Now let's actually get into the code. First of all, if you have not cloned the repository, you need to do it right now because we are going to copy paste a bunch of files from there. Then I want you to switch to a particular branch. So we are going to do git checkout, and here you can say 6-deploying-agents. This is where you start coding for this particular video. Once you do that, I want you to know one more thing. When we are deploying an agent to the agent engine on Google Cloud on Vertex AI, it doesn't work if you have Python version that is below 3.9 or it is above 3.12. Right now you can see that we have 3.13 as the version, and this won't work. So what I want you to do, if you have already generated a virtual environment, that you need to remove it. So you do rm-r, and here you can remove the venv. Once you do so, you need to install Python 3.12, and you can Google how to install it. But once you have this, for example, in my case, I do have Python 3.12 right here. So I can create a virtual environment using this particular version. So I can say Python 3.12, and here I can say here I can say virtual environment, and then we are going to create a virtual environment just like this. Now, another thing that we need for deploying is a particular package. So what I want to do here is that I'm going to essentially open this project, and then I'm going to go to requirements.txt, and here we need to add a new package. The package that we are looking for is essentially this. We need to use Google Cloud AI Platform, and we are saying that we need some dependencies there. We do need to have ADK there and agent engines. Both of them are going to be used in our project. So let's quickly save this. Then what we are going to do is we are going to go to our project here. We are going to do source venv, and here we are going to say bin/activate. Now we have the environment activated. Now I can run pip install r and then requirements text. So this will install the packages that we need for deploying our agent engine. Now going back to the deployment instruction, you will see that for the agent engine in Vertex AI, we need to go through some steps. One of the steps is we need to install the Vertex AI SDK, which we just did. We also need to have Google Cloud CLI installed in our machine, and you're gonna find that when you go to more information about agent engine. So for example, if I click this particular link, I will come here, and here you can see that we need to have a couple of things here. First of all, we need to have a Google Cloud project. So you need to create a project on your Google Cloud. For that, you could go to console.cloud.google.com. And if you already don't have a project, you can just create one. So you can click here, you can click a new project, and then you're done. In my case, I already have a project created called Multiversity. I'm gonna still use this one. Secondly, you also need to enable all the Vertex AI and cloud storage APIs. You need two specific things for this whole thing to work. One, you need to have Cloud CLI installed in your machine. Secondly, you need to also have a bucket in Google Cloud, which we are going to create in just a bit. But once you have a project created, you can go here and you can see initialize Vertex AI SDK for Python. In ADK, we needed to install the package. We already did that. Then we need to authenticate as a user. Now, when we are running this in our local machine, you need to use local shell here. And you can see that we need to do this exact thing. We need to run gcloud auth and then application default login. For this, you need to install the Google Cloud CLI. So you can basically Google it, how to install it. And once you follow the link, you should be able to see how you can install it. So we have different variants for different operating systems. Once you have that done, you can also look into this quick start where it should tell you how to start using Google Cloud CLI. So if I try to say gcloud init, you're going to see that this is the step that you need to do. Once you have your Google Cloud CLI installed, just follow these steps, and you only need to do this once per machine. You don't have to do this twice. Once you have that, you need to run Google Cloud Init. This will initialize the Cloud CLI for you, and then we need to authenticate as well. And the authentication particular command is this one. You need to use gcloud auth application default login. The reason why we are doing all of this is that your project will try to see how it can access Google Cloud or how it can access Vertex AI. If we just put in our code the name of the project, the name of the bucket, how will it access Google Cloud? Because it has to be a secure connection. So what happens is that using the Google Cloud, the Vertex AI project in Python or the library in Python automatically looks in your local environment. What is the current set project, and do you have credentials? Are you logged in? All of those things would be checked. For example, if I go here and say gcloud auth and then I say help, it's going to show me what commands I can run by default. So we are looking at a couple of commands here. If I go a bit down here, you can see that we have the list command here, which lists the credentialed account. We have login that we should be using to log in and authenticate. Then we also have this revoke that we can use. Let's try using the revoke one. So if I say gcloud auth revoke, let's see what happens. And here you can see that now it has revoked the credentials for my email, and that means that I cannot access any Vertex AI project from now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this particular command so we can set up our initial or our default application. So I'm going to go back to my console here and run gcloud auth application default login. And now you can see that it has given me a particular link to follow. So I'm going to quickly copy this, and I can also see that this opened in the browser. So I can quickly try to access it, allow it quickly. And there you go. You can see that I'm now authenticated with the Google Cloud CLI. So it's a really easy process. Now in here, you can also see that credentials were saved to this particular file where we have our JSON credentials. And this is what Vertex AI later on looks as well. Now here you can also see the Coda project is multiversity. It was added to ADC, which can be used by Google Client libraries for billing and Coda. This is important. You have to have your project listed there. Otherwise, you would have to specify the application, which application you want to use. Another thing that we can do is to specify the project ID manually by not using the command that we just used. For example, if instead of using this, if I just say Google Cloud Auth login, it would just set my login credentials, but not the project ID. So what you could do in that case is that you could say gcloud auth revoke, and I already revoked one, so it says no available. But if I say gcloud auth login, then I can go to my browser, just allow to do it. And now if I come back to my console, you can see that it says you're now logged in as this email, but the current project is this one. And you can change this by setting this. So you can just run gcloud config set project ID, and by that you will be able to set up the project ID yourself. Now when it comes to the project ID, you can see that here on my Google Cloud console, the multiversity project ID is exactly this. So you can set it using this exact value, and then you're good to go. Well, now that we have set up these things, the one thing that you need to do is to create a bucket. So you can just go to console.cloud.google.com, select your particular project, and try to search something called buckets. Once you do so, you're going to go to this particular page. You can see that I already have some buckets here. For example, social post agent test 1. This is something that I've created already. So what you need to do is you can just quickly go ahead and say create, and then here you can give it a name. For example, social post agent. Just keep it simple. I'm just going to use social post agent 1 still. Once you do so, go ahead and say continue. You're going to select the region here. So you can say multi-region, select US. It doesn't really matter much for this example, but for production, obviously you need it to be closer to your users. Then you say continue. You keep the rest of the things as default, click continue, and then click create. One of the things that you need to do is in this particular step where it says prevent public access, you need to make sure that this one is selected. And it's going to ask you once again that you really want this to be restricted from public access. Say it, because we want this to be private and only accessed by the credentials. Well, once you have created the bucket, you're good to go. You just need to know the name of the bucket. Having said that, let's actually start coding. So what I'm going to do is, now that we have the packages installed, Google Cloud CLI set up, we have our bucket created, we can go ahead with creating the folders. So we can quickly say 6 deploying -agents. This is going to be a folder here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to multimodal, and I'm going to copy essentially the environment, the init.py, and the agent. So let's quickly select these things. We're going to copy this. We're going to go inside here and we're going to create another folder for this one. So we're going to say social_posts_agent. Then inside the folder, I'm going to paste this. Now you might be thinking, why do we need to create a new folder? We haven't done that before. The reason for that is that when you deploy a particular project, you need to have it packaged, and the packaged names in Python cannot contain dashes. That doesn't really work. So it needs to be underscores. That's why we're creating a new folder here to basically contain everything inside. That only makes sense. Now, if we try to look at the environment file, you can see that we have a bunch of things here. We have the Google API key. We have GenAI model that we have set to Gemini 2.0 Flash. We have the Vertex AI that we are saying false. You can use true here, or you should be using true here. Then we have OpenAI model, which is ChatGPT or GPT-4o. Then we are using the Cloud model, which is 3.5 Haiku. And then we have the OpenAPI key, Anthropic API key as well. And if you look at the agent.python file, you will see that this is the agent that we have that we created for the LinkedIn and Instagram as well. So here we have three different agents. We have the researcher agent, which uses the Google Gemini 2.0 Flash. It essentially uses the Google search tool as well. Then we have the LinkedIn agent that's supposed to create a post for us. It uses the LinkedIn model, which uses the OpenAI model in this particular case. And then finally, we have the Instagram agent, which uses the Cloud model. So you need to provide these variables and also the API keys to make it all work. So make sure you do that. Now, I'm not going to go into the agents and how they work or what are the instructions, because I already have covered that in the previous video. We're going to focus on deploying and just deploying. So let's talk about deployment now. I'm going to start by creating a file here, which will be called deploy.python. And I'm going to go through this pretty fast, but feel free to pause the video and copy paste this stuff because there's a lot to cover and I don't want to make this video too long. So we are going to start with importing a few things. We are going to import OS. We are going to import .env file because we also want to extract out these API keys and models and whatnot that is in the environment file. Once we have all of this done, we need to go ahead and include Vertex AI because we need this to work. Then we have social post agent that we are importing from the file. So here you can see that from the deploy file, I'm saying from social post agent, which is a package right next to it, go in the agent file, which is inside here, and then import the root agent, which is essentially the main sequential agent. Then we are also importing a bunch of things. We are saying agent engines and then reasoning engines. We are importing both of those things because we are going to use them. Now, after this, we need to set up the credentials for our Vertex AI. So here we need the project ID variable, which essentially tries to get it from the environment variables, but we don't have that set. So it by default sets it to my multiversity project. Then for the location, we are using US Central because remember we used the multi-region, which was US. So this is the value to use. Then we are saying that we have a bucket on Google Cloud, which is exactly this one. So here you need to have your variable or your value for the bucket. If you did it according to my instructions, it could be social post agent or whatever you gave the name to the cloud bucket. Make sure you have exactly the same thing mentioned here. After we have done this, we quickly go and initialize the Vertex AI agent. So we give this the project, we give this the location from here, and then we give the staging bucket from here. So we give these three values as we have just discussed. Now that we have this, we are going to package our application. So we are going to wrap this agent that we have into an agent development kit application. And we do that by doing this. We say that there's a variable called app, and we are going to use this reasoning engines from Vertex AI. We are going to say reasoning engines.adk app. So we are packaging our agent as an application here. And we are also saying enable tracing true. This is important because we want to see the logs in Google Cloud Console when we are creating a new deployment or when we are querying or sending a message to an agent. We need to see those. So we are going to enable the tracing here. And finally, we are going to create a remote application here, which is going to be done by agent engines.create. So here you can see that we have Vertex AI having this agent engines module, and we are using the create method here. Now this needs a couple of things. The first one is agent engine. So agent underscore engine equals, we are going to give app to it because we have already created the app right here. So we have an agent engine here. Then we need to provide a list of requirements. And if you go to our requirements.txt, you can see that these are the packages that we have. We have Light LLM, Pydantic, Google Cloud API Platform, and python.env. These are the things that I would want to just put inside this deploy file when we talk about requirements. So here, I'm just going to post it like this. Requirements equals, and here we can say Google Cloud API Platform with this thing. We have Light LLM, we have Pydantic, and python.env. For this particular one, we don't even need Pydantic because we used it in the structured output video, but I'm just going to keep it like this. And finally, we need to also pass the whole folder as a source code to this application. And we can do that by saying extra packages. In the extra packages, we are going to say that this is a social post agent folder right here that we are supposed to pass. If you look at here, we have the deploy file here. And then we are saying that when we run this file, we are going to look at this social posts agent, which is right here. And we're going to pass this as an extra package alongside our deployment. And well, that's pretty much it. We now have our remote app created, or should have created. In the end, we are just going to say, okay, print that a remote application was created. And we just take the remote app that was just created here and just show the resource name here. So we're going to save this quickly. And now we are going to try this out and see if this works. So I'm going to go to my console here. My Python environment has been activated here already. So I can quickly go ahead inside the folder, 6 deploying agents. Here we can see our deploy Python here as well. So I can quickly run Python and I can say Python 3.12, just running with the same Python version. And here I can say deploy.py. Let's see what happens. You can see that the ADK automatically identifies this requirement, Google Cloud Platform, Pydantic, Cloud Pickle, and whatever is missing, it automatically adds that. For example, it knew that Cloud Pickle is something that it needs to build this, but since it was missing, it automatically added this in the list of packages. Then it's looking at our bucket that we just created, and it's going to go and push a new deployment in there. And you can see that it says writing to this particular bucket, and then it says creating agent engine, and then it will go ahead and say just monitor your progress there on the Google Cloud. Now if I try to copy this and go check the logs, let's see what happens. I'm going to quickly open this into a new tab, and in here we're looking at logs explorer, and you can see that here we are having some logs. So it says collecting these packages, downloading. It's a bit small. I'm going to increase the font now, and in here you can see all the logs that we could see. Actually, we could expand it. That could make things easier. So essentially what's happening right now is that it's installing all the packages that it needs to bring this agentic AI team to life, and it will do it using the bucket that we created before. If I go to my bucket here and if I click this social post agent test, from my previous deployments, you can see already that we have this agent engine. But from your first deployment, you will see exactly the same thing. We would have this agent engine folder, and inside here you will see these 3 files. You could see agent engine pkl, we have dependencies, we have requirements.txt. So all of these files should be here. And once this is done with this step, you should have a new deployment created automatically. And I'm just gonna let you know that this could take a while, so don't be freaked out if it's stuck here for a while, because it takes a few minutes. In the meantime, we are going to go ahead and start writing some scripts that can help us interact with this remote application that we have just created. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call this actions, and I'm going to do it in the 6 deploying agents folder instead of the social post agent. So I'm going to create it with deploy.py. So we are going to call this actions.py. In here, I'm going to paste the code directly, so you can find the same code in the main branch in the GitHub repository. So just go there, copy the actions.py file and paste it here. We don't have to write it from scratch because that's going to take too much time. But I can quickly show you what actions are here. The first thing that we have is listing all the deployments. If you have made multiple deployments of the agent over time and you have not deleted those, previous deployments would still be there, which really helps us revert back or talk to a different agent in a particular different environment. For example, in your staging environment, you could be talking to a particular deployment. In your production, you are actually looking at a different deployment, and you can name your deployments as well. So in this example, what we are looking at is from Vertex AI, we are using agent engines, and all of the functions are available on this particular module. So here you can see that we are saying deployments is a list that would come from agent engine. So we just call the agent engines.list method and we convert that into a list. Then what we do here, if there's no deployment, then it just prints this and then returns an empty array. That's pretty much it. If there are deployments, then it essentially prints the names of those deployments. So this is the first thing that we are going to do. But I'm going to also show you other functions when we get to that point. If we have a look at our other terminal tab, you can see that the remote app was already created. We have this deployment that is ready to be used. And all we need to do is just access this particular deployment and start communicating with it. And we are going to do that step by step. So having actions created, now let's actually create a new file. We're going to go here and we are going to create a new file called run-flow.py. And this is again on the level of the deploy.py file that is inside 6 deploying agents folder. Now at the top, I'm going to import just some basic things. So we have importing OS, we have SYS to exit when we want, and then we have time here as well. Then we are also using the .env package to get the environment variables, simple stuff as before. Then we are going to go ahead and import the Vertex AI here. Then here we are going to say from, and we are going to import from actions. We can say import list deployments, create session, list session, all of those, but we are going to start with list underscore deployments. Then we are going to initiate the Vertex AI project just as we did in the deploy script. So we are going to get it just like this. So we create the project ID ID, use this as a default. We have location as US Central. We have a staging bucket, which is this one, social post agent test 1. And then we initiate our Vertex AI project. Now let's code something. We are going to say if we are running this file directly, then we need to do some stuff. The first thing we are going to do is we are going to try to list all the deployments that we have done so far. And since we have done only one, we'll just get one from here. So in here, you can see that we are saying listing deployments, and we are basically getting the deployments and setting this into a variable. And if you don't remember, in the actions in the list function, when we send the results back or when we try to get the list, we convert that into a list itself and then we send it back. And this is a Python list. So if I go back to run flow here, you can see that we get the deployments here. Then we are going to check if there are no deployments at all, we just exit the whole program. So we are going to say if not deployments, we print no deployments found exiting, and then we just do system.exit. Simple. However, if we don't really exit the program, that means we found a deployment and then we are going to pick the first deployment out of the list that we have gotten, because it doesn't make sense to hard code a deployment ID here. I'm just using the first deployment. So let's say we create a deployment, which we just did with the deploy.py file, running it, and then we get this one from this variable. And then what we do here, we basically take the resource name from this deployment and assign it to the resource ID. This is what we have to use essentially. Then we're creating two different things. We are creating a user ID and a session ID. Now you might be thinking, why do we do that? And that is because when we start talking to the agent, whether it's local or remote, we need a particular session here. So we need to create a session, and the session doesn't really work if you don't have a user for it. So we need to have both the session ID and the user ID. Now going back to the code, if I try to go to actions.python file, you're going to see that we have this function called create session. What does it need? It needs a resource ID, which is a deployment ID. It needs a user ID, and that's pretty much it. Then it creates a session for us. So we need to have the resource ID, which is used by agent engines.get. So when you're trying to get a list of agents or a list of deployments, you use the list method. When you try to get a particular deployment, you'd use this agent engines.get using the resource ID, and then you have a deployment there. Then what we do here is we say on the deployment, I want to create a session, and this session would have this user with the user ID. When we do this, we create a session on a particular deployment, and that session is bound to a particular user, and then we basically send this session back. So let's quickly try this out. So I'm going to go to the run flow here, and once we have the deployment ready, we have the user ID, which is hard coded, and we also have a variable for session ID. Now we are going to essentially create a session here. But even before doing so, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say I want to list all the sessions that are already there in a deployment, which means that if I have my production agent team, are there any sessions there of particular users of the user that we are just talking about? If there are those sessions, then I want to just reuse them. Otherwise, I'm going to create a new session. So here we're using this list session method. So you need to import that from the top. So here I can quickly say create session and list session. Let's use both of them. So what we try to do here is that we use the list session method, which takes the resource ID and the user ID. So it goes to the deployment and tries to see, okay, how many sessions do we have for this particular user? Once we get those sessions, we basically list them. So let's quickly try to run this and see what happens. So I'm going to go to my other terminal here, and I can simply run Python 3.12, and here I can say run flow Python. Let's try to run this and see what happens. Now here we have an issue. Here it says line 11 has an issue, cannot import name, create session from actions. Okay, makes sense. Let's try to see if that actually exists. So here we do have list deployments. We have create session right here, which should be there. Maybe I did not really save all the files. So let's quickly save all the files and try this again. Okay, now it works. So now first it's listing the deployments. Remember, we only have deployed one. So we see one item here, which is this one. And then it says using the deployment. Okay. Then it's trying to list sessions, and you can see that we don't have any sessions at all. So because we didn't chat with the agent so far. So let's actually make that happen. So I'm going to go to run flow, and here at the bottom, we're going to say if we don't have a session, then just create it. So here we're going to say if we don't have a session, we just print no sessions found, creating session for user ID. Then what we do here is that we say session equals create session, and we pass the user ID and the resource ID. When we're creating the session, we're just going to use this thing called time.sleep just for a while. So the session is created and registered. I don't think you need it, but I just use it for testing purposes. Once we have this, we can simply say if we don't have a session created, even after running this particular command, we will just say fail to create a session, and then we'll just exit, because there's no point in proceeding forward if we don't have a session. However, if that's not the case and we actually got a session, then what we'll do is that we'll take this variable that we assigned to none initially, and then we'll override it with the created sessions ID. So we say the session ID becomes the session.id or session ID, and then we just say, okay, we have a session created, and we just use it. So if we don't have a session, we basically create it. But what happens if we already have a session? In that particular case, we need to just use this else statement. Here we're going to say we found these amount of sessions sessions, or these number of sessions in this case. And then we basically try to do the same thing. We basically try to assign the session ID. So what we do here is we say, get the first session from the list of sessions that you have just found, and then get the ID from that session, and then assign it to session ID. Similar stuff what we did here. Now that we have this, let's quickly save the files, and then we're going to try to run this, because this time we should be able to create a new session. So now you can see that we are trying to list the deployments as before. We're trying to list sessions. There was no session, and now it's creating a session for us. Now you can see that it created a session for us that has this particular user ID, which is hard-coded, that also has the app name, which is the deployment name, and this ID is the session ID that we have just gotten. Now in this particular case, it said no sessions found, but let's say if I try to run the same command again, it should be able to find an existing session and then continue from there. So now it's trying to list the session, and now you see a different message. Now it says, I found one session, and then using the existing session ID instead of creating a new one. Super nice. Now I'm going to show you another function here, which is getting a session. So here we're going to use get session to get a particular session. So after all of this, let's say once we have our session ID populated, I want to check if the session actually exists via this particular API. So what I'm going to do after this is I'm going to say get the session using the session ID. So here I'm saying getting session details. We're using the resource ID, which is the deployment ID. We have the user ID, and we have the session ID. Because we have the session ID, we need to see if the info exists. Then we are saying if we don't have the session info that we just tried to get via this function, we are going to say, no, we failed to get it, and we're just going to exit the system. After this, the next step is to send a message to query the data. So we are going to go here and we are going to say print sending a message, and now we need to use the send message function. So here, let's go to the top here, and we are going to say send a message. So once we have this send message from here, we can go ahead and start using it. If we look at the function itself in the actions file, let's try to go to send message. You can see that it takes a couple of things. We need the resource ID, we need the user ID, we need the session ID where we need to send this message, and the message itself. And you can see that in this particular function, we use agent engines.get to get the deployment first. Then we use the deployment.stream query. You can use query if you don't want to use tokenization or the streaming of tokens as you go forward, or you could use a stream query. It's either or. When we use this particular function, we essentially print the values that come outwards, and then we log them on the console. So we are using the stream query with user ID, session ID, and the message itself after we have retrieved the deployment. But let's go to the run flow file again, and let's try to actually send a message here. So I'm going to use the send message function here to send the resource ID that we already have, the user ID, and the session ID. Then I need to send the message itself. And in here, I'm going to say what is new in Angular v20, for example. Once we have this, I'm just going to quickly go ahead and close this, and we are good to go. We should be able to see the response coming from the agent from this. So let's quickly go to the console here, and let's try this out again. So it's trying to list the deployments right now. Then it tries to list the session, finds an existing one, and now it's going to send a message. Here you can see the message itself. And here you can see the response event that contains the text that came back from the agent. Here you can see that it says that it is supposed to be released on May 29, 2025. And today actually is May 18th, if I'm not wrong. Yes, it is at the time of this recording. So it knows from Google search and how we have built our engine to get the most relevant information, and then creating an Instagram reel script and also a LinkedIn post as well. So it's going through all of that, and this is actually working on Vertex AI Cloud, which is amazing. Now that we have done this, how do we check that the sessions actually work? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the function here, and I'm just going to say, what did I ask you to do? And then I'm going to say, don't do anything else, just answer the question. So when I do this, it's going to not do the search again if the session is persistent. So I'm going to quickly save this, and then I'm going to go back to my console here, and I'm going to run this again. All right, so it's listing the sessions now, getting the sessions detail, and we send a message. And now here you can see that it says, you asked me to research Angular, as you can see right here. And you can also see that and provide a summary of what's new in that version. That's pretty much it. You can see that when we sent a message, before that, when you tried to get the session itself, this time, when we got the session, we got the details. Inside that, we have the events, and the events automatically contain what happened before. That is the chat that happened before. So it has the responses that were discussed before, and the new message was just sent in. So that's how the session maintains the list of events that happened before, including the messages that were shared in the conversation between the user and the AI agent. This is super cool. Now, how about we try to delete a particular session? For example, if I try to go here and I try to put this code here, which should delete a session, let's quickly go at the top and try to also include this delete session as well. Now in here, we are using the resource ID, user ID, and session ID. If we go to the actions.python file and we try to go to delete underscore session, you can see that it requires the resource ID, user ID, and session ID, because obviously which deployment do we want to go to, which session do we want to delete, and what is the user ID. So in this case, you can see that we first try to get the deployment using the same agent engines.get method. After that, we try to say that deployment.delete session. We pass the user ID, we pass the session ID, and essentially that just gives us the response that this is deleted. Awesome. So I'm going to go to run flow file again, save everything that we just worked on, go to the console, and here I can try to run the flow again, and this will delete the session, which means that this time it's going to know what did I ask it to do last time. But if I try to run the same question again, like what did I ask you to do, the next time it won't remember it because the session would have been deleted. So here you can see that this time we sent a message, what did I ask you to do? And then it says you asked me what you asked me to do. So it's like an inception going on there. Anyways, the session has been deleted, which means if I try to ask the same question, it would either not know what happened or it would make up something if it's hallucinating, and we need to basically be better with our prompts there. So here you can see that no sessions were found. That means it created a new session. It got the session details after that. And then if I ask, what did I ask you to do? It says that you asked me to research a topic you provide and give a summary of that research. Now, why does it say that? The reason why it does is that Google Agent Development Kit behind the scenes, when it sees what the agent should do or the agentic AI team should do, it constructed this message or a message that has the same meaning as research, provide the summary of the research, etc., etc. And that goes like a system instruction or something behind the scenes. I did not have to provide it, but what Google's Agent Development Kit provides to the agent itself is the answer that's coming from here. So don't be surprised if you see a message like this, because there is already some instructions, some messages in the agent even before the user asks the first question. So I hope that makes sense. Well, the fun part is that we have gone through all the major actions that you can perform with Agent Development Kit connecting with your remote application. We listed the deployments, we got the deployments, we created a session, we deleted a session, we list the sessions as well, we sent a message as well. So all of those things are here. Now we could also try to delete a deployment that we did before, so there is no deployment existing, and that is usually helpful when you want to get rid of, let's say, the staging environment agent, or you want to cut cost and remove the previous versions of the deployments, etc. So we are going to create a new script called cleanup, and in that we are going to do a couple of things. One, we are going to delete all the sessions of a particular user in a particular deployment. So first we are going to clean all the session, then we are going to delete the deployments. Now, if you delete deployments, essentially you get rid of the session, so you don't really have to do that. But I want to just show you, for the sake of showing you, that you can delete all the sessions within the deployment, and then we can get rid of the deployment itself. So let's quickly do that. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create a new file here called cleanup.py, if I can type correctly. Then let's quickly start coding this. So first thing first, we are going to import some libraries here. We're also going to import a .env as well, just like before. Then we are going to go ahead and import Vertex AI. We are going to import delete all sessions, delete session, and list deployments, just 3 functions from the actions file. Then we are also having exceptions here and the agent engines. Now we are going to create or initialize Vertex AI as before. So we give the variables here, just like before. We do Vertex AI init, easy peasy. And then we start our code by saying start listing deployments. So here we are saying if we are running this file, then essentially we get the list of deployments. We get that as a list. Then we're checking if there are no deployments, then just exit it. Don't do anything at all. But if that's not the case, then what do we want to do? We essentially want to have remote app in deployments. Then we want to go ahead and we want to say get the resource ID from the remote app itself. After we have that, we want to delete all the sessions of the particular user. So we are passing the resource ID that we have just gotten for a particular deployment, and then the user ID itself that we have hard coded. So all of our sessions have been now created with this particular user, so it's going to be fine. Then we can just add some print statements here, like cleanup finished, or not cleanup finished, but we can say all sessions deleted. Once we have that done, we can remove the deployments as well, but let's try this out for now. So I'm going to quickly save this file and go to my terminal. Now I'm going to run this file named cleanup.py. Let's see what happens. So here it's listing the deployments. There should only be one deployment in this case, as you can see. Then it's deleting all sessions. So now it says sessions for the user 1, 2, 3. These are the sessions, and the session list were not found. Good. I want to do one more thing, and that is if I run the flow itself, I want to see if the session still stays there, because the reason is since we delete the session at the end, it wouldn't save it. And that means that we need to do something funny here. We are going to remove the delete session line from this particular file. So let's quickly go to the code here, and then here we're going to go to run flow, and where it says delete the session, we're going to just comment this out for now. So let's quickly save this. I'm going to quickly go ahead, and here it's trying to create a session for the user, but I'm going to stop it and let's quickly run this again. All right, so it created a session for us. It's trying to get the session details. Now it's sending a message, and now the session was not deleted. Now if I try to run the cleanup function, let's see what happens. In this case, it should be able to find a session that it can delete just for the sake of looking at cleanups. All right, so now you can see that it found the session for the user, and then it basically went from there and says all sessions deleted. Nice. If I try to run the command again, it won't find anything because we already did the cleanup, so no sessions should be found. There we go. You can see that there were no sessions essentially to be found. Now the last thing that I want to show you is to delete the deployment itself. So the whole agentic AI team on cloud would be gone, which means that nobody's going to be able to use that and you won't get any billing. An easier way to save money, so to say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to cleanup here, and then we can quickly go below this line, and here we can paste this. So here we are saying agent engines.delete, and here we are giving it the resource ID. So first we get all the deployments, then we go one by one on each deployment. First we delete all the sessions of that deployment, and then finally we go ahead and we delete the deployment itself using the resource ID. Simple. So I'm going to quickly save this. Let's go to the console. I'm going to actually run the flow first, and now you can see that all the sessions have been deleted and the deployment also has been deleted, which means that if I try to run the workflow, it's not going to work. So if I run the workflow, it's going to try to find deployments but will not find any deployments whatsoever, and it will exist. Now while I was actually doing this, I checked something and I was a bit embarrassed to see what happened here. So we have a bunch of errors that are being shown in the logs explorer for this agent that we have built, and one of those is really important. Here you can see that the API key client option must be set either by passing an API key or something. So here you can see that we don't even provide the open API key environment variable. That means that our agent doesn't fully work because we didn't see the LinkedIn post or the Instagram post while I thought I saw them, which means that we have to set the env variables somehow. And for the environment variables, if you go to the Vertex AI Agent Engine deployment sort of information, here you can see that if we go a bit down here, we should be able to find environment variables. And what this essentially says is that we can pass it just like we do the requirements. We can essentially take the environment variables just like this as a dictionary or a list just like this. So we are going to essentially use the dictionary here to pass our environment variables. So what we want to do is to go to our social post agent and in the agent.python see which sort of variables we are trying to use. So we should be able to see environ here. So we are using OpenAI model, Cloud model, Google Gen AI model. So these are three. And I think those are the only ones that we want to send. Apart from this, we also need to send the API key variables as well. So we are going to quickly go to the deploy Python here. And here we're going to start with env variables as well, which is this. So environment vars. And here this should be a dictionary. So we are going to start with, we're going to say Cloud model. And instead of actually setting it from the OS environment, we need to set it from somewhere else. Now I could put the values here hard coded, but you don't do that. You don't push your code with API keys. That's not intelligent. So what you can do is that in the deployment instructions, you can see that you can use secrets or Google Cloud Secrets Manager to essentially provide the values as secrets right here. So what we want to do is something like this. For this, we need to go to the secret manager and essentially create some secrets. So we are going to go and click this button, create a secret. And what this basically means is that we are going to go ahead and select a project. So I'm going to select my project here. And then you go and try to search secret manager. And then we need to enable this API. So quickly enable this. And now we have the secret manager enabled. So we can quickly go ahead and create a secret here. Now we can go ahead and we can say we need to have the OpenAI key, and that should be equal to the variables that we have here. So we do have OpenAI API key. So we have OpenAI underscore API underscore key. So I can pass the value right here, and then I can say create a secret. And now you can see that we have a secret here called OpenAI API key, and we have a bunch of versions here as well. So I'm going to go back and create a new secret. This time we are going to take Anthropic API key. So we go here, we say Anthropic API key, then we pass the secret value, and then we can go ahead and create the secret from here. Now we can also take the Google API key as well and paste the value here. And now I'm going to create the values for other variables as well. And now I've created all my secrets here. You can see OpenAI model, OpenAI API key, Google Gen AI use Vertex AI, Google Gen AI model, Google API key, Cloud model, Anthropic API key. All of these are here. And if I click on any one of those, I can see the ID, which is right here, and then the version as well. These are the two things that we need to provide in our file or in our code when we are deploying. So I'm going to quickly add these values to the code. All right. So I've actually put all the environment variables here. So you can see that we have Anthropic API key with the secret name, and this is copied directly from the console. So if I go to my secret manager here, you can see that I can copy the value right from here, and the version ID is 1. Since all of them have the same ID, I've basically just copy pasted it. So we have Cloud model, saying Cloud model, and Google API key, Gen AI model. So all the variables are here. Now that we have this, let's quickly save this now, and we should be able to use them now in our deployed agent. But what's more important to discuss here is the secrets have to be created in the same project as the one where you're deploying your agent engine, for example. So having said that, let's actually try to deploy it again. So I'm going to quickly go to the terminal here. Let's quickly try to run deploy. So I'm going to run Python 3.12, and here I can say deploy.python. And I'm hoping that this time when we have our deployment done, it should work. Okay, so we have some errors. All right, here I'm seeing that it doesn't really show what could be wrong. So we do have environment variables as they should be. If I save this now, let's try to run this again. It could be that they had a server error. So let's try this again. If it doesn't work, then the issue is at our end. Okay, so the issue is definitely at our end. All right, I think I figured it out. The issue was that the name or the ID should perhaps be this instead of this that we used with the resource name, I'm assuming. So we are going to try that. So I'm going to quickly go here and we are going to change this. So let's quickly say we do the same thing. And now we have updated all of them. So let's quickly save them. We're going to go and try the deployment again. Let's see what happens. All right, so this time it seems to be working. That means that the path should not have been there, but here now it seems like it should be able to deploy. Good. So we are just going to wait for a while. I'm also looking at the logs at the moment. It seems like that all the packages are being downloaded and the agent build is being created at the moment. And here we can now see that the Docker container is being pushed as well. Nice. All right, so it seems like it broke for some weird reason. All right, so after some hours of debugging, sleeping overnight, and then coming up with a solution, I can quickly tell you what happened and why this was not working to save you hours of problem and fatigue. So what really happens is when I tried to use secrets like this, it doesn't work, even though the documentation says to use like this. And I also reached out to the Discord of the Google Dev community, but I've not gotten any response so far. But I tried some things, and what actually worked at the end is I'm going to tell you what I tried. So I tried to just use the API keys from the secrets and the rest of the things from here. Well, in that particular case, it worked to some extent. For example, this works, but as soon as I introduce a secret like this, it just stops working. So that kind of made me think, is my file, which is the env file, is this being passed in the deployment? And if yes, then what's missing? How the environment variables are not connecting? As you can see the code here, this should pass my environment variables. However, when I went to the documentation and tried to explore it, I could see this particular part when it says you can use a list. And this hit me because here this corresponds to this particular code, which means that if I have my environment file there and I declare variables like these, that would just pick the variables from the file and would make it available. So all I needed to do was just to declare my variables just like this, and it should work. So in the end, what essentially worked is this. We just needed to provide our environment variables like this to tell the ADK that we have variables in our environment file, and it just needs to pick them from here, which also then means that I don't really need these variables at all, so I could delete them. And that's what I'm going to do quickly now. All right, so you can see that now my secret manager is essentially empty, so I don't have any secrets at all. And I'm going to quickly go ahead, delete my deployments and rerun a new deploy. So I'm going to go and run the cleanup command just like this, and it should list the deployment and delete it as well. There we go. Now we are going to create a new deploy. So we are going to quickly deploy with the variables we have. And also I've put some things in the agent itself. So if I go to the agent Python file, you can see that I have some print logs that basically show the values of all these variables. So when I'm deploying them, I'm just making sure that I can access those. All right, so I'm going to run this. And here you can see we have OpenAI model, Cloud model, OpenAPI key, we have Google API key and Anthropic API key. So all of them have values being printed here. And now it's going to deploy this very soon. All right, you can see that now the deployment was successful. So we don't have any other issue. So now we can quickly try to run our flow and see if we get the first agent's result, which is the research summary, the second agent, which is the LinkedIn post, and the third one, which is supposed to be the Instagram reel script. And we don't have the secrets in the Google Cloud Secret Manager anymore. And we just use the simple environment variables that are bound with our environment file. So let's quickly try to run the run-flow Python command and let's see what happens. So now it's trying to list the deployments. There should be no session, so it's going to create one. And now it's sending a message. Good. And now this one is the first message that has come so far. We're going to wait for the second one now. Let's see. Now this is the second message that has come. This should be the LinkedIn post. And now we got the third one as well. Let's quickly inspect all three results. So here you can see that we got this response event that comes with the research part. So it's really hard to read all of this, but if I scroll a bit down here, you're going to see that here we have another one that is response event. And here you can see Angular v20, a paradigm shift in web development. And then this is essentially the LinkedIn post right here. Now, if we try to search response event in the terminal, we should be able to find the instances. So if I say response event, here you can see that this is the Instagram reel script for Angular v20. And here you can see the hook, fast pace, etc, etc. If we go to the next one, here it says, okay, I will merge the LinkedIn post and Instagram reel script about Angular v20 into a single out. So we have all our agents working together. We have the researcher, we have the post generator, which is LinkedIn and Instagram, and we have the post merger as well. So this is working on cloud and we are able to access it from our code. So this can be expanded, this can be used for end users and can be scaled pretty easily with Vertex AI. Now, having said that, I understand that this video was a bit longer. It actually took me longer than I thought it would because of the issues that I faced and, workarounds, but then also trying to package it in a way that's more understandable for you. So I would highly appreciate if you can give a like to this video. That really helps the channel grow as well. And also share the video so others can also benefit from the videos as well, and share in the comments what was the best part about this video or what could be improved in the future as well. With that said, happy coding, and I'm gonna see you next time.